Hey, welcome back to Rust Order Garage and the 71 Nova LS swap, T56 swap, experimental videos swap, empty turbo 350 case swap. Lots of swaps. So I think this is the last experimental, I'll call them experimental type video. The whole idea of these first few videos was to try to put together an LS swap punch list or kit that if you had if you have little to no fabrication experience and you just want to buy bolt-in parts, what could you buy reasonably priced that will allow you to do this and not have to spend $1,500 up to, I've seen, for an aftermarket LS swap kit. So that's the whole idea of these first few videos. We've already gone over engine mounts. We've gone over exhaust. Last thing we have to do is going to be the oil pan. Well, all right, before we get into the oil pans, I have one last exhaust item to check. I made a purchase the other night, and now I need to see if this thing will fit here. Doesn't mean it's for this car, but I have another Nova, and I want to see with our mount set that we have decided on, does this fit? All right, that crazy manifold does fit. Little tight-headed upper A-arm bolt, but that can be trimmed. Does not need to be that long to adjust your caster. So yeah, I bought another turbo, which means I have pretty much everything on hand to do another turbo kit, or just about everything, but not for this car, but possibly one of the other Novas. So I just wanted to see if it fits with these engine mount set that we decided on, and it does. So now I can keep that in the back of my mind. If we build another Nova, which I know we're going to build another Nova, maybe that'll get the turbo. I don't know. What do you think? I bought a turbo. Should I put it in a Nova? Or maybe something like that Roadmaster? All right, here are the 4 oil pans that I have for this video. 3 aftermarket, 1 factory. The 3 aftermarkets are all the popular, common eBay oil pans, one of each model, rear sump. The 302-1, the 302-2, and the 302-3, all on eBay for well under $150. Some of them I picked up close to $100, just depends on the day, it seems. And the last one is the factory F-body oil pan from the LS1 Camaro or Z28. So we're going to fit all of these up into the car, see how they fit. And we're also going to talk about windage trays, mods you would need to do, and one thing that is very, I don't want to say controversial, but something that always comes up, and that is the dipstick tube and oil level. All right, before we do the oil pan install, first thing we'll talk about is the full level of the pan. Your engine has a windage tray on it. That's to keep the crankshaft from whipping oil up and splashing it around, and actually it's free horsepower. So do you want your oil level up into the crank area? No, you do not. Can you put it up to the windage tray? Yes, you can. Now, the big question is, if you put in one of these eBay oil pans, can you use the truck dipstick tube, or do you have to buy another one? Yes, you can use the truck dipstick tube. It will work fine. Should you remark the full level? You do not have to, but you can, and I will show you how that works out right now. All right, to start off, we have the 5.3 in here, and I have the factory dipstick tube in place. The highest dot on the dipstick tube, which is the full level, is 1 inch below the windage tray. Okay, so when the oil is full, it's below the windage tray. It doesn't matter if the bottom of the pan is a foot below, or 6 inches below, or 4 inches below. That's the full level, below the windage tray. Now, can you raise that an inch and get it up here? Yes, you can, and I'll show you why. So what I'm going to do now is remove the truck windage tray. And I'm going to replace it with the F-body windage tray, which is really no different except for it is shorter. The front section is cut off of a factory F-body windage tray because it's needed, and we're going to go over all that when we go over the windage tray portion of this. So we'll install the F-body windage tray, and now I'm going to install an F-body dipstick tube, and we're going to look at where the full level is on this. Because when I bought the F-body oil pan, it came with the dipstick tube and the windage tray. A nice complete package. Now, this is a little hard to do, but maybe you can zoom in on it. Now on this one, the full level is pretty much even with the bottom of the windage tray. Okay? It's not up in here. You don't have, if this was full, you don't have oil really inside the windage tray. It's pretty much, well, maybe it's just above it. It's right, yeah, now it's right there. So pretty much the full line for the F-body dipstick tube is right there, a little bit higher than the truck. Now, why would GM do that? Probably because obviously the F-body pan has a lot lower sump, and to get more oil capacity, you can raise it up. But you do not want the oil full level to be up inside the windage tray. But the best thing to do, if you're going to install one of these eBay oil pans, is get your windage tray set, put your truck dipstick tube in here, and scribe a full mark right at the bottom of the windage tray. And don't overfill it. I think the truck also, it's a little bit lower. It gives you a little bit of leeway, but you do not want to overfill it. So let's take a look. So now if we say the full line is right at the bottom of the windage tray, let's take the windage tray off and look at the crank. Let's get this out of here. That back down. All right. So now I have the crank turned so that the rods are all the way down, and the 5.7 and the 5.3 both have the same stroke of 3.62. So that's the other thing to keep in mind. We're talking about stock engines here. If you've got an engine with a real long stroke to it, your oil level full line should be even lower. But right now, the rods are not much, maybe a 1/4 inch above the full line. Let me get a level. Yeah, not much. About a 1/4 inch. So if you decide to mark your full line at the bottom of the windage tray, don't overfill it. Myself, I would leave it a little bit below that just to give yourself some leeway, and it's not going to have a problem. So I've got everything assembled back as stock. Truck dipstick tube, truck windage tray. If you really wanted to make a mark and where full is full and you're never going to overfill it, you could make a mark, say 3/4 inch higher. If you go an inch, you're really pushing it. You know, you could put a scribe mark 1 inch higher than the highest dot, but then that has to be full. Like if you overfill the engine, you're going to drain it. Most people don't do that. So really, there's nothing wrong with leaving the truck dipstick tube stock and maybe filling it up a ½ inch over the full line, and you'd be safe. I've done it with the eBay pans and just left it alone as is, just like that. And then I know if I overfill it a little bit, it's perfectly fine. I don't have to worry about it. So those are the measurements, just to recap, because this question comes up a lot. If you buy an eBay oil pan, any of these, 302, 1, 2, or 3, do you have to buy a new dipstick tube and dipstick? No, you do not. Do you have to remark the fill line? No, you do not. You can leave it just like it is, and if you want to overfill it just a touch, that's fine. But don't go crazy, because if you get into the crank and you start whipping the oil around, you're actually going to cause yourself more problems than if you were low on oil. All right, so now you know all about dipstick tubes. Get this one out of the engine. You know what to do. Do not just dump 6 quarts in an engine and mark the full line because somebody told you to, or because the ad for the oil pan says it holds 6 quarts. Total capacity also figures on what oil filter you're using. Real long one, short one, what are you using? You know how to do it the right way. With the oil pan off, put the dipstick tube in, see where the bottom of the windage tray is, mark your full line just below the windage tray. That's really where full is. All right, enough of that. Let's get into windage trays. All right, windage trays, the next thing you have to know about before you install the oil pan. I'll just make it real simple. For the 302-1 eBay pan, you do not have to modify the truck windage tray. It fits perfectly. For the 302-2, 302-3, you will have to cut the front off, similar to how this factory F body is, but I think I actually had to take off a little more off the sides. Now, the way to know before you even put the oil pan on the car, very simple. Take your windage tray and lay it in the pan. Does it fit below the rail? Or if it sticks up like this, that's no good. You know it's not going to fit, and you need to start cutting to get it to fit. Because when the windage tray is in there, it should be well below the pan rail. And we will go into that when we start doing the eBay pans. I think I'm going to use this one first. This is the F-body pan, just because it's already out of the box. And I'm hoping I can fit it up in there without having to raise the engine. If I have to raise the engine, I will. But what I'm going to do is just take this beat-up factory gasket that I have and stick a couple bolts up in it to hold it together somewhat and see if I can fish it in from under the car. And we'll see if this fits with our engine mount set that we're using. I took the flex plate off the engine to get myself more room to just put it in. I didn't have to lift the engine. So on first glance, everything looks good. You've got a 1/4 inch clearance to the pan. Everything looks fine up front. Plenty of clearance over the subframe, all looking good. The problem comes when you go to steer that over and you crash into the oil pan. You cannot get full steering lock without hitting the pan in both directions. So, will the F-body pan work with the engine mount set that I have selected? No, it will not. All right, so the F-body oil pan will not work in this application with those engine mounts. Just something to keep in mind. This sump is 11.5 inches long from the rear to the front. So anything, you know, what do we want? You really didn't need a whole lot less. Probably 11 inches or less. 10.5 to be safe should work. Which means that I think any of these oil pans here should work. But let's start mounting them up and see. All right, next pan we're going to look at is going to be the 302-1. Reason being is that most people don't recommend this pan. If you ask on the online forums, everybody immediately says use the 302-2. But I've used the 302-1 in applications, not a Nova, and I really like this pan a lot. So I want to see if it'll fit. Part of the reason I like it is you do not have to modify the windage tray for this pan to work. It fits with the stock truck windage tray. I'll just put that there. The 302-1 has the shortest sump that there is out of these eBay pans. This sump is only 7 7/8. No, I can't read tape measure. 7 5/8 deep. Really short. So it's really good for a lot of different applications. I think where the problems come in with this is the front part of the pan here may be deeper than the 302-2 and 3. We're going to check that out. All right, and as you can see here, take the stock truck windage tray, and I can lay it right in here. No issues. It's well below the pan rail, so you don't have to modify this windage tray to use this pan. I'm not gonna install the windage tray. We're just gonna put the pan up there, but I already know from previous use that it does not need modifications. So let's see if I can fit this up here and see if it's not too deep up front to clear the subframe. All right, the 302-1 pan is a no-go in this application, and that front is the reason. It is setting down on the subframe, and the mounts are not lined up. So the engine is too high. Not going to work. That pan has a ton of room around the steering, of course, but that's not going to make it in the Nova with these mounts. All right, that leads us to the last two oil pans, the 302-2 and the 302-3. The reason I have them both out at the same time is they are very similar in dimensions. There's a few details that are different, but overall, the sumps are 9 3/4 inches wide, which is the main thing there. They both have the front area of the pan recessed, so both of these should fit where we had the problem with the 302-1. The 302-3, the main difference is the 302-3 has on each side a bung 1/2 inch NPT for turbo drains, and it looks like the recess in the front of the pan for a stroker crank is a little larger than the 302-2. The 302-3 also has the edges on the front of the sump are cut off. So it's not square. These are actually curved in here. And that's right where you had the steering problem with the F-body pan. So if that was close to your steering, that's a nice thing that gives you a little extra room. As far as fitment, I think both of these are going to fit without a problem. They're both also, what is this one? Call it 5.5 inches deep. They're pretty much the same pan other than those little details there. And this one, same thing. So we'll fit them both, make sure they fit, and then come back and go over what we found out. One thing I forgot to mention. Both of these pans will need the windage tray modified if you have the truck windage tray. You're going to have to cut the front off and turn it into an F-body windage tray, which I already put the other one away. But this is the truck one, and it will not lay in here without being above the rail. So the front section of the truck windage tray will have to be removed. All right, let's fit this up there. Well, unfortunately, I lost the audio on my last little segment there. That was for the 302-2 oil pan, and it fit perfectly. Clearance everywhere, clearance for steering, clearance for subframe. 3022 worked perfectly. Here is the 3023, which, like we said, is basically the same oil pan. Just a couple additional things, like the turbo drains and a little bit more room for a stroker crank. Same with this oil pan. It fits exactly the same. Lots of room at the cross member. Lots of room everywhere. No problems. Put the steering over all the way. And we're good. And like I said on the 3022, this is even with an inner tie rod end with an inside grease fitting. It clears. No problem. Same with going the other direction. As we put power steering fluid everywhere. Oof. No problem. Good thing I got a rag on the ground. So plenty of clearance. Also plenty of clearance to the ground. Looks good. We're just barely below the subframe. Here's a look at the oil pan under the car. It would be the same for 302, 2 or 3. And you can see pretty much a little bit above the subframe line. And really, really good fit. Say that's the winner. All right, so that's it for experimentation. I think that worked out good. So you could very easily make yourself a nice low-buck LS install kit to put an LS family engine in your 68 to 74 Nova, as long as you use these mounts, and a 67 to 69 Camaro or Firebird, again, using these engine mounts. So in the end, engine mounts, we used the Nova short and narrow frame stands, 350 stands, not just small block. They got to be the 350 ones, 2 3/8 inches wide, about 1.5 inches to the mounting hole. Watch the previous video for the details. 350 engine mounts, not 307 engine mounts. Set of $25 Amazon adjustable plates, well, at least with multiple locations for mounting. What else do we do? The headers. Headers, I think the long tubes fit the best. In fact, with the stock engine, you may even want to just consider running one of those long tube sets that I use, because they both really fit nice. Probably less work than the shorties, because the shorties, I always end up cutting the flanges off and welding down pipes on them. If you don't want to do that, the long tubes take care of that. So that would be cool. And then as far as oil pan, my choice would be either the 3022 or the -3. If you have nothing and are starting from scratch, I would just buy the 302-3 so you have the turbo drains in case you want to get silly with it in the future. You buy the 2 and then you want to do a turbo, you'd have to switch oil pans or put a drain in the timing cover or just get into other stuff. So because I already have the 2 and the 3 here, I'll probably put the 2 on the engine because I have no plans on putting the turbo on this Nova. So that's the one I'll end up using. And you'll see all that because now that all this is figured out, it'll be time to get onto the 6-liter and get the real engine in here. And with these parts, as far as transmission cross members goes, I guess it's all going to depend on what transmission you use. If you decide to keep the Turbo 350 or a Muncie or a Power Glide, that cross member, factory Turbo 350 cross member is going to be slid forward. You could drill new holes in the subframe and get to it. And the drive shaft's going to be a little short. I know some people talk about using longer yokes. I don't like that method, but it's your car. You do what you want. I would run a longer drive shaft and get the right length. If you're going to run a 4L60 or 700R4, then the factory cross member will probably be in almost perfect position. Maybe just have to open the holes up a little bit. And the drive shaft may work as is. I haven't gotten the measurements, but the 60E and the 700R4 is longer than the Turbo 350. So if anything, you might have to shorten your drive shaft a little bit, which is very easy to do, much easier than finding another one and getting a longer drive shaft. And of course, none of that is going to apply to this one because I'm putting the T56 in there. So the transmission cross member for this is going to be probably different than all of those. And same with the drive shaft. If I have to shorten a drive shaft, I will show you how to do it. It's very easy, no special tools required. You do need to know how to weld, and weld decently. You don't want a drive shaft coming apart on you. But it's not hard to shorten a drive shaft. It's actually very easy. So, is that it? I think that's about it. I'll have to decide what's going to be next because we're done with the mock-ups. We could move on to now getting the 6-liter prepped to get into the car, because the T56 mock-up is just going to be mock it up and do it once the 6 liters in here. I'm not going to use a dummy engine for that. I'll just get it done. So we'll figure it out, and we'll see you on the next one. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you for subscribing, and I really appreciate you following along. We'll see you on the next one. Later.